Welcome back to the MC65 FM podcast. Today we are talking about one of the biggest shifts happening in software development right now. For the last few years, AI assist development has largely meant autocomplete, code generation, chat interfaces, and yeah, um, and give some co-pilots to the people. But now we are entering a different phase. We are moving from AI that helps developers write code towards AI agents that can perform development work. Um, they can inspect repositories, understand issues, modify files, run tests, reason over failure, create and pull requests, and potentially work through entry engine tasks. And that's changed the problem because one of the AI agents starts operating inside a large product code base. The biggest challenge is no longer simply where the model can generate wild type scripting. The real question become what context does the agent receive? How does it understand the architecture? How does it know your team standards and how you stop it from making locally correct but architectural terrible decisions? And how do we verify that the work in products is actually safe and merge? My guest today is Lars Gyrup Brink Nielsen. I hope it's spelled right.
That was
Uh,
pretty good. Thank you.
oh, thank you. Microsoft MVP in development technologies, an X
Yes.
champion, GitHub Star alum, book author, international speaker, tech writer, open source maintainer, and community organizer. If I have forgotten something, you can correct me. Lars has extensive experience across front development, cloud native systems, developer experience, automation, testing, continuous delivery, and deployment, and what calls agentic experience. He's also been working with GitHub Copilot since early days, and he spent uh, more than year automating open source software development. Um, More recently, Lars has been codified team standards, especially for AI coding agents, and one of the hardest problems in large monorepository clean context. So today we are going deep into GitHub Copilot, TypeScripting, NX, Playwright, automated testing, and so on. Yeah, Lars, welcome to the MC65 podcast. I hope I haven't forgot anything.
Thank you. There's always more, but that was a lot. Thank you for remembering all of that.
Yeah. Um, Last, before we get into the AI agent topic, let's start a little bit with your background. You worked across very broad range of developer technologies. What originally pulled you into software development, and why did JavaScript become your favorite programming language?
Oh, then we have to go a long way back, uh, because I guess already as a child I got interested in computers. I'm from 1986. I just turned 40 years a few weeks ago, and got my first Commodore 64 as 5 years old boy, and that's what got me hooked. Basically, I couldn't program, but just having to enter commands on a keyboard and insert cassette tapes and things like that, that was
Mm,
just really interesting to me to get to play games. And then then I started tinkering with computers. Back then, as you might remember, it was not that easy to set up and install drivers and install Windows and operating systems and all of that. It was not nearly as easy as it is today. So you had to know a thing or two about computers and how they work and building your own collect like buying different sets of hardware like the motherboard and the RAMs, and everything had to fit together and you had to plug them in and connect them to the case and all of that. So I'm really interested in like that type of engineering work and how things work generally. I've also been into engines, but that's for another discussion. But what then got me interested in programming itself was when my neighbor visited me, and he had just started in the 10th grade, and they had an HTML course in his school.
Mhm.
So he taught me the basics of that, and that's I never stopped from then, and that's 25 years ago or 26 years ago. So I always knew that I wanted to be something with computers. I didn't know what exactly, but I ended up studying computer science, got a bachelor's degree, and then I've been working professionally with software for 14 years now. But I was really tinkering with it for, yeah, 25, 26 years, doing hobby projects and hand coding HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And even before there was any CSS and there was barely any JavaScript and so on. And then you're asking me, Mirko, how did JavaScript become my favorite language? Well, it was just always the web platform that intrigued me, since my
Mhm.
neighbor visited me and taught me HTML, and I could get something on the screen on my own just by writing something in Notepad and then opening it in a browser. That was really, really cool to me. And you could view the source of any web page, copy some snippets, and tinker around like that, and make it look like things that people know, like giving a Windows XP theme on your website, things like that. So yeah, that was really what got me interested. And then I just kept going. When I was studying computer science, the it was the first wave of mobile applications, but I still wanted to bet on the web. And today, mobile applications are more common, but back then it was sort of a bubble that burst. Everyone was doing mobile applications, but then they stopped for a while. Now it's more common again, but for many years that wasn't the best idea, and the web apps were more interesting. And I still think web apps are more interesting, and they can do almost the same things that as native mobile apps, from my perspective.
Mm, mm. What when you have now so many experience in JavaScript, how did the ecosystem like when you start and what is today?
Yeah, well, when I started 15, 16 years old, I didn't have a code editor. I was writing in Notepad. I even wrote pen and paper PHP code, for example. And then I had to imagine how that worked without having a real server and real computer. I took some Perl courses as well outside of school hours, and so going coming from that was the most basic form of programming or web development for me. And then when I got into professional development, um, let's see, I think it was around the time where you had to have backward compatibility with Internet Explorer 8,
Mm,
and sort of the first or second round of like application frameworks in JavaScript were just coming along. It was Angular JS was big, Vue, no, not Vue, that wasn't there yet. Ember was there, and then the React, the first version of React was released a few years later, or around that time. And responsive web design was pretty new.
mm,
And I remember we were rewriting a big software system, and my CTO at the time thought it was a waste of time to make it work on tablets. Nobody wanted to use it on tablets. And my perspective was, well, if they don't want to use it on tablets, it's probably because it doesn't work on tablets. Maybe if you design it responsively for tablets, even mobile phones, even mobile first, then maybe people want to use it. The users want to use it because it's a pretty good experience, right?
mm.
And of course, that turned out to be right, as I see things.
Yeah, it's funny. I started nearly the same way, but I make all the wrong decision you can do. What was it? I think first it was Adobe Flash, I think, then Silverlight. Then I do the CSS course, but yeah, you have done the JavaScript and TypeScript. why become so essential part of your development workflow?
TypeScript in particular or JavaScript? Or
TypeScript.
well, I was actually I didn't choose it uh, in the beginning of my career. I had to pick a framework. I picked well, I actually initially I didn't. I also didn't pick Angular JS. I picked something called Knockout JS by some people at Microsoft, Steve Sanderson, a few other people, and it was a small uh, JavaScript framework. You didn't have to compile it. There was a template language similar to what Angular, modern Angular has today, but it worked at runtime. Of course, that also sets some limitations for how complex the app and the big the application can be. But they did have one good primitive in Knockout.js. They had observables, and that was before Angular got obsessed with RxJS observables. Um,
Mhm.
but unfortunately, they also had two-way data binding, which turned out to be not so scalable for big applications. But we were really just getting started back then at what was possible. A single page application was a pretty new concept to do mainstream. I mean, Gmail was one of the first success stories of that. That was some years earlier, but to do it in an enterprise setting was still relatively new and not something that was a given that you could do a single page application in JavaScript. No, no, you could just use the server side technologies like ASP.NET and PHP, Laravel, and Ruby and Python, and all of that.
Mm. Oh yeah, Ruby on Rails. Oh, that was also time. Yeah.
Ruby on
Uh,
Rails, Django, things like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The good old times. Yeah. Um, Normally, I ask you're an MVP. I ask about the MVP title, but yeah, you have so many other titles. The ANX champion. You are a GitHub Star. You're also an outro maintainer and community organization. How important has open source been shaping the way you think about software engineering?
Well, just a small correction. I'm not a GitHub star anymore. I was for 4 years or so. Now I'm an alum, so I'm just mentioned as a former GitHub star. So I'm not directly involved in that community program anymore. I am an active Microsoft MVP, as you mentioned, and have been so for I think 7 years straight at this point. I'm involved in the NX Champions program as well, around the NX toolchain and now the Polygraph product, which is brand new from the NX team as well. But yeah, open source. Well, I love open source. I love learning in public. I love the idea of open source. I like building things with open source. And especially now with AI coding agents, where you
You-
can actually sit one person and get a lot of stuff done because
Yeah.
of the amplification that the AI coding agents gives you. So now I'm trying all sorts of things. I've been doing that for more than a year now. Just things I couldn't do before because it would take too much time for me to invest in of my personal time just to learn something and then be able to do it. Now
Mm,
you can either the AI already knows, or you can point it to some documentation and books and articles, things like that, and then it can learn in a matter of minutes or hours. And that's what's insane about AI coding agents, that it really gives you superpowers. You become superhuman.
mm.
And yeah, circling back to open source, well, I have contributed to open source for I think 12 years or so. I've been part of a few open source teams. I still make contributions every year to various ecosystems like Angular. I maintain some Angular testing and logging libraries as well, and state management. And I do a lot of personal open source projects, um, just because I think it's interesting and because I'm suddenly capable of doing things I hadn't learned yet before. For example, I just created a type checker for the Angular framework where it only does type checking. so it doesn't do the build or the compilation. It just does the type checking step, but it does it fast, and then combine it with this NX toolchain. You can do it per project in a large code base, and then enable NX caching on top of that. And that's really good for an AI because that
Yeah,
gives it a way of making a static analysis of the code really fast for a particular slice of the code base.
yeah, yeah. Um, Before I start a record the session, I look a little bit about my guest, and I also use AI. And normally I ask, what is the term the guest use frequently? And for me, or for what the AI say, you use the term development experience quite a lot.
Oh,
Well, or
uh, well,
our
that's correct. Definitely correct.
yeah.
I didn't know that I used it a lot, but it's definitely what I've been focusing on a lot professionally,
W-
especially.
What does developer experience actually mean to you?
Um, oh, I don't have a definition ready, but just on top of my mind. But to me, it's removing friction in the tooling you use in a specific code base or within a team or an organization. So, for example, I I've been in a lot of so-called systems teams or platform teams where we have built software to enable other teams to build software on top of that software within a company, large organizations usually. So um, we would set up the tooling like CI pipelines and automate testing frameworks and NX and .NET solutions and all that kind of stuff, and then make reusable packages for setting up new projects, documentation, how to courses for writing tests and optimizing the CI pipelines again, and picking a date time framework for .NET and all those kind of things that makes the other teams support them in having to, yeah, they can spend more time writing
Mm,
product code,
mm,
uh, and they might not have a big knowledge in this area of all this tooling and schematics and testing and all of that. But when they get these reusable software components, then it becomes easier for them, and you help onboard them, and then they can spend more time doing what they is the priority of their team.
good. Uh, uh, Interesting, interesting. Um, I think a little bit what for you it's a poor developer experience. What is a good one, and what separates it from an excellent one or outstanding?
Well, I'll give you couple of examples of very poor development experience.
Okay.
So one you definitely have tried yourself. It's deploying to production via FTP.
Mm.
so, so you take, for example, a PHP files or multiple usually, and you just upload it to the production server via FTP, and then
Yeah.
you check, did it work or did I just break production? So a lot of setups used to be that many years ago at this point. And sometimes you would even sit and edit, or I saw some people sitting and editing the code directly on the production server. So there was not even source control. It was just edit the file on the server, and then you hope you have a backup, and there's no
Yeah.
version control. Right?
Yeah.
That's a very poor developer
Yeah.
experience
And what
because
separates
the
a
room for the margin for error is so big. There's
yeah,
so many things
yeah.
that can go wrong and will go wrong.
And what will you say makes a good one to yeah, nearly perfect, awesome? I don't know, to outstanding. I say out I use outstanding. Outstanding.
Well, I'll just give you one more poor example.
Okay.
So I was at a web agency or e-commerce agency. We had many clients, and so when you would start work on a client's project, there was a shared file server in the internal network. So, and there was again there was no source code, so no version control. Not that they didn't exist. This organization just hadn't adopted them. There was no Git, no Subversion, nothing like that. So instead, the they would zip, like make a zip archive of the source code and then put it in the shared file server. So when the next person came, they would take that zip file, copy it to their own machine, unzip it, work on the code, zip it back, put it back on the production server, overwrite the existing file.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, I don't know if you can guess what happened.
No, no.
You would have to start working on a project and you go into the file server and
Mhm.
there was no file. There was no zip file, no source code,
Yeah.
because instead of copying the file, the previous person had moved it to their own machine and not put it back.
Ah, yeah, damn. Oh, man. Oh, how often this oh, yeah, fuck, yeah, that was so often, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a poor developer experience.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I I really forgotten this. Oh my god, this was so often, yeah. Um, and what would you say make good to outstanding?
So what's a good developer experience? Well, these days it's a lot also about the agentic experience. So, but we can talk more about that later, maybe. But for the developer experience, to me, it's a lot about the development tooling. So having the right, um, uh, I mean, it shouldn't be specific to an editor. Should be able, ideally, to use any editor, your editor of preference. But maybe the framework decisions have been made, for example, for the web application framework, but also for the testing framework, the testing runner, the build tool chain, the bundler, the development server, the storybook, for example, set up for your reusable front end components when you're building front end, like me. And maybe even, so I'm a big fan of NX. And one of the things you can do there is you can set up um, per project, you can add tags. So you can add any metadata per project. And then based on that, you can make architectural boundaries, which is really important in a large code base. So you can say this type of project can only depend on that type of project. So the classical N tier architecture, for example, with database abstraction layer at the bottom and then business logic and then maybe the UI on top. So you can make enforcements of that through lint rules added by NX when you add your own metadata per project. I think that's really nice if for working in a large code base as one example. And the other one is, so maybe you have a special naming convention for your large code base, but you can't. It's so complicated that you can't even remember all the details yourself or anyone on the team. So then you make uh, and what's called an NX generator, which can scaffold projects or front end components or services or whatever that follow that naming convention to the dot. And then, of course, you add a lint rule on top of that so that no matter whether it was generated by the NX generator or by an AI agent or by a human handwriting it or copy and pasting it, or maybe it got stale from an old branch, then the lint will catch it and say, oh, you're not following the naming convention. You should use this format instead. So having a lot of CI checks like that that you can run locally and it goes into the CI pipelines, that's one example of a good developer experience to me. And then taking it to another extreme is what you mentioned in the beginning: continuous delivery and continuous deployment. I don't know how familiar you are with those terms, what you've done in that area yourself.
I use the tools for it, but yeah, uh, it's, yeah, uh yeah, I like it. Especially, I'm more the tool guy, so I like to be guided from I don't know from DevOps, GitHub, and so on, and I get my steps because I'm not a real coder. I'm more an architect, and so I speak to the people. They have more experience, like you.
Mm. But you've used GitOps as well. I heard you mention GitOps. What was that like?
It's worse. I really fair. I'm a DevOps guy. I hate it for the start, but I love all these kind of automation and versioning, and it's more. I don't know. I think I use both now together because I have my boards. I have my clear overview about GitHub. It's so good. I think yeah. It's how was it? Uh, First, I feel very bad because as I started, uh, Azure DevOps don't have this integration, and I hate it. I don't use it. I say, oh no, 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 no. But now I think it's yeah, it's worked for me. Yeah, I think it's not perfect, but good.
So yeah, so you've used. I don't know if I confused what you said. Did you say GitHub or GitOps?
GitHub.
Oh, I thought you said GitOps. Oh, because that's more bleeding edge, even more than continuous delivery, continuous deployment. I mean, they can be combined. But have you heard about GitOps?
No, no.
So similar to DevOps, but Git instead of Dev, so GitOps. So that's a way of managing your environments and deployments and releases in a Git repo. Sometimes the same repo in some infrastructure folder, sometimes in a separate repo. And then there are a lot of tool chains that can, that solves all of the problems that come with that. Um, because I used it for a project, and we sort of build our own with some existing tool chains, but then we built some custom GitHub workflows and actions on top of that to make it work, so that we could have a multi repo system where we could have one of these GitOps uh, environment repos that could connect with all the other repos, so that you could, for example, open a pull request, and then an entire Kubernetes cluster with real databases and all of that was set up just for your one pull request with a preview or testing environment, so that you could see it in a production like environment. Of course, it wasn't to the scale of our production systems, but it was a real environment, was running on real Kubernetes cluster, was spinning up all the real containers and so on, just on slightly worse hardware, right? Not production servers. But that was so incredible to see that and use that. But I also know that it took 4 months for the team to build that, and in those 4 months, we didn't build any features. So, and of course, you always know the balance of make features or improve the development experience or the deployment workflows or whatever. That's always the what. Which one do you choose?
Yeah. Yeah. There are some cool things we'll talk about. Let's take the NX stuff a little bit later. Um, you say monoreps or large monoreps. I'm more working because my brain works so. I'm more the multi-independent respiratory guy. What? Why should organization adapt monorep or what is the monorep and why should organization adapt this?
So, a monorepo is using one Git repo or whatever version control system you're using, and having all your systems in that shared uh, repo, that shared Git repo. Um, it uh, so monorepo. Well, you can have multiple systems, and they can all be deployed from that single repo. So even if you have a microservice architecture or micro front ends, they can still share the same repo and be independently deployed.
Mm,
And that's one confusion that some people a misconception they get, that if you have microservices or micro frontends, they have to be in different repos. No, that's not the case. It's more a matter of organizing the folders and maybe using some tooling like NX or
mm,
Turbo Repo or Rush or Learn Base. There's a bunch of them.
mm,
Um, so yeah, so that's a monorepo, having multiple project or multiple systems in the same Git repo. And when you have that, then you have to either make some custom scripts or
mhm,
find some tool chains that can help you with that. Um, and yeah, it's just a big. I love monorepos, but I also have seen in huge systems that it's with hundreds or thousands of developers,
yeah.
it's not easy to get them into one repo because
Uh,
they already have dozens or hundreds of repos in dozens or hundreds of teams and hundreds or thousands of developers. So getting them into one repo is really hard unless you did it from the beginning and you kept on to having just this one mono repo. I mean, Microsoft has Google has one mono repo for all their internal systems.
mhm,
They have some open source repos. Of course, they are in separate repos. Like Angular has a few repos, for example, but they are actually synced. Every commit is synced into the Google mono repo. So they use a commit from their open source repo in their internal mono repo in Google, as an example. Microsoft has not one mono repo, but a
mm.
few. For example, one for Office, one for Windows, and so on.
Okay. Yeah, I think, from my understanding, how did we when we have one, it's going to all be. I think it's also hard, not thousands of developers, but hundreds or ten of developers. It's could be complicated. How can we handle this, that we get result? And I think when I have all in one repo, then one dude makes an epic failure, and the world, nothing runs again. I lose the.
Yeah, and you're touching on something important here. It's usually not the tooling, the developer experience, or the development tooling that's the problem. It's usually people having to interact with each other and manage their dependencies between the teams. And whether you're in multiple repos or in a mono repo in a shared code base,
Yep.
there will be problems. And going into separate repos doesn't solve the problems. It just manages them in another way because now you can't another team can't contribute to your code, so they have to talk to you and make change requests. Can you change this? I depend on that, and so on. Okay, so how do we test that in your repo? We're in separate repos. Now we have to spin up an environment, deploy both our code bases, and see if it breaks.
Mm,
Whereas in a monorepo, you can usually run the multiple systems, even locally, or more easily uh, add it to a preview environment because you have all the code available in just one repo. But as I said before, it's not easy to move many developers into one repo, especially not if they already have many repos. So something new that came in this area is actually, as I mentioned, from the NX team. NX has always been a monorepo toolchain,
mm,
but they have also seen with all these Fortune 500 companies and big enterprises that it's near to impossible to get many repos, many developers
mm,
to get them into a monorepo. It can be done, but even that process is just it's long and hard, and you need experts and you need a bunch of tooling to make it work. So what they have done instead at NX is they have released a new product called uh, Polygraph, and that is related to AI in that it's also a meta harness. So it helps your AI coding agent set up or manage multiple repos that have dependencies between each other. So you can manage multiple Git repos in a single session, and you can say, I want to change this, and I want to change it both in the backend repo and the frontend repo and this third service repo and so on, microservice repo. And it can do all of that. It can run it on your machine. It can see how the dependencies go. NX has this concept of a project graph where you can see how the projects are interconnected. That used to be in the same code base. Now you get something similar in a poly repo setup. So now that's why it's the polygraph, because it's the graph for poly repos. So it
Mm,
can see how they're connected, even though they're not sharing the same code base or the same Git repo. And then it can make your AI coding agent understand that better. And it has some session recording, so that you can it sort of backs up or logs the sessions you have with your AI coding agent, and then you can share it with another developer on your team and say, "Can you continue this session? Here's the whatever key," and that they could jump in their AI coding agent, open up Polygraph, and say, "Resume this session," and now they're continuing your session from your machine on their own machine, and they still have this. So maybe for this one session, these two repos or these three repos are set up because they are relevant to the change you're making. So now it's like having the environment set up for the AI. So you already did it just by configuring Polygraph, and now you're sharing it with your colleague. Here's the harness for this change, and then you can use that together to open multiple pull requests in multiple repos on GitHub, for example,
yeah.
and then manage that dependency through the AI coding agent. What
Uh,
do you think about that?
I I I have so many questions about mono reps, but uh, let me a little bit unfair, and I'm a little bit out of this topic. I see some guys have an X and stand on their LinkedIn profile. I never before heard before we have say we make this podcast. I have googling or ask ChatGPT a little bit about an X, and um I do not really understand what NX is. Is NX a building system? Is it a framework for monoreps, or is it a developer platform? What is NX?
Everything you just said. Basically, it has multiple features. It has grown over the years, and the product I mentioned before, Polygraph, that's a separate product, but also from the NX company. They used to be called Narwhal Technologies, and they're still legally called that. Then they switched their name to NX, the company as well, because NX was their primary product. Most of it was and is open source, and then there are some premium features on top of that,
Uh,
called NX Cloud and things like that. But Polygraph is something separate. It's a separate product. It doesn't require NX. There's basically not even an NX integration in Polygraph yet. I'm sure it will come later on. That's a natural fit for these two technologies. But just to be clear, that Polygraph is separate. You don't need NX to use Polygraph. If you work in multiple repos, whether it's open source
mhm,
or inner source or just a big big company, many developers, many repos, then
mm,
and you use AI coding agents, then Polygraph is a pretty sweet product. And right now, everything's free because it's early stages. So you just submit a form, and then you get access to use it and use all the features for free for now. So and there's no you don't have to add anything to the repos to use it. It's driven via their cloud server. So of course, if you are in a company, you might need to have them vetted as a vendor. They have type 2 SOC 2 compliance and certifications and all of that. So, but you might have go through that vetting process if you're in an enterprise. But of course, that's possible both with NX and Polygraph. Then circling back to what is NX? Well, it used to be mostly about JavaScript code bases, whether that's Node.js backends or Angular, React frontends, or whatever. And it was about um, picking a few technologies, not just one of each, but a few. For example,
okay,
React and Angular has official integrations in
mm,
NX, and then testing wise, there's Jest and Karma and VTest and VTest browser. So and then So in JavaScript, there's so many tools and they change all the time. So it's hard to figure out how to set all of that up. So basically, that's the biggest, or that used to be the big benefit of NX, that it can integrate all these tools together. And when new versions arrive, NX will have configuration or code migrations that run automatically. No matter how many projects you have, it'll upgrade all your projects in your entire code base with the configurations for each of these tool chains, like testing and linting and building and compilation, all of that. So that it was just again something that's part of a good developer experience, is not having to worry about how you set up all those different tools and how they integrate together. So that's something NX did for you. And then on top of that, it has these generators, as I said, where you can scaffold uh, components or configurations or tests or whatever, and you can make your own. Um, and it has what's called executors, which are wrappers for different tools. So there
Mhm.
was an executor for ESLint, there was one for just testing, and so on. So basically, all your CLI commands had what's called an executor in NX, which meant that NX could run them for you across all, even across hundreds of projects. It could run all of them. So all the tests, for example, whether it was locally on CI, and you can filter the projects based on these metadata, project tags, and so on. Today, though, you don't need this special concept of an executor anymore. NX will auto detect the tools you have, the configurations you have. So it's more of a zero config or close to zero config tool chain now, whereas before you had to have all these different NX specific things like the executors. But now it's inferred based on the configuration files and the dependencies that are already in your project. And then adding on top of that is not only about JavaScript anymore. There's now official support for .NET
Mm.
and Java, Maven, and Gradle, and things like that in NX itself. And then on top of that, there's open source projects for other supporting other programming languages like Python and Go and things like that. So it's at this point it's a what's it called, a polyglot tool chain for
Mm.
task orchestration and integration of tools. And then on top of that comes the one of the premium features, which is caching.
Mhm.
So all the commands that you run locally on your CI server, like build, test, lint, format, all of that is can be cached. Both the files they would produce and the terminal output they would produce. So if you run unit test or end-to-end test for your big project in your code base, and it takes several minutes, as an example, for end-to-end tests, then if the files, the test files and the source code files it touches doesn't change, and you run the same command again, you get the immediate cached output of that. Oh, the test is still passing. No wonder there was not any code change. But at the same time, maybe there was some code change, but it was in a separate project that wasn't, there was no dependencies between the projects in your code base, even though they were in the same code base. NX was intelligent in that they could see there's no imports between the projects. For example, there's no dependencies between the projects. So we know that this task is will give the same outcome, short of flakiness in test, for example. But in ideal circumstance, it should give the same output, especially for unit test instead of end-to-end test, and for lint tasks. Uh, on top of that, distributed caching or remote caching. So now you can share these cached tasks between your team and the CI server,
Mhm.
or maybe just one way. Maybe only the CI server can write these cache entries, and then you get to reuse them on your local machine. So if and usually all the projects have been tested for the latest commit on a branch or in a PR on the CI server, because someone pushed it. So that when you go and open the project on that branch, you can get the cached output in milliseconds instead of minutes or hours for running testing and linting and building and compilation on top of millions or hundreds of thousands of lines of code in hundreds of projects. So yeah, that's the some of the basic features of NX, and then comes AI things on top of that. So that was the crash course in NX and the most basic features.
Uh, for me, for understanding, how did NX fit into the GitHub, I say GitHub world from your experience? Is it
Hmm. Well, um, in the GitHub, which part of GitHub I think about something specific or open source or
yeah, yeah, open source? Is there is I don't know. I understand it's NX is it's the basic is completely free.
yeah, free and
Normally
open source. Yeah.
open source, normally open source companies sell you, I don't know, business extensions, or they sell
Hmm.
you consultants, or they sell you,
Yeah.
I don't know, some stupid stuff.
Wh-
They sell
Yes.
you some added-ons like the caching. Uh,
Yeah.
what did you think? Um, and I think GitHub, it's by Microsoft. I don't know. I think so. Uh,
Mhm.
let me think about my question. Um, so
Well, well, all the features I just mentioned are free and open source in NX, and then comes on top of that NX Cloud and all the features that are in NX Cloud. I talked about the caching. There used to be free solutions for self-hosting the cache remotely, for example, in an Amazon S3 bucket or Azure Blob Storage or Google Cloud Storage. Uh, that's no longer supported out of the box, but you can build your own integration. There's an open API spec if you want to host your own cache server. So it's doable, but it's not plug and play out of the box anymore. So if you want the remote caching, you'll have to pay for NX Cloud basically.
Mm, mm,
And then, yeah, just to mention one thing, how does it fit with open source? Well, open source projects can get NX Cloud for free, so they get all the paid features for free. If you're an open source project, fill out a form, they approve you, say, "Here you go, here's your license key."
mm,
There's a pretty well-known family of projects in the JavaScript ecosystem called TanStack,
mhm,
and that's a at this point a huge code base with many packages going into npm, many developers, many different contributors that maintain each of the packages, and they have because of that they have a lot of ci running in github, um, and then they use the nx cloud, so they get all this caching for free, which means their open source developers have to spend less time waiting for CI because it's cached in the NX cloud.
mm, mm,
And then on top of that, there are some features like you can go in and trace how much did each step of the CI workflow take, and how can you optimize it, get some AI assistance into optimizing your CI pipelines. And even if there isn't an error, something that fails in CI, you can use what they call AI autofix. So the AI will make a suggestion on how to fix the failing CI task and open a pull request to fix it. So that's
mm.
part of NX Cloud. Also, as an example, when you have the paid NX Cloud subscription or you're an open source project that get the free open source license.
So it's more, I don't know, um, competition to GitHub Copilot?
Not GitHub Copilot, but GitHub Actions. GitHub as a CI runner,
Yeah.
it is a competitor because they have what they call NX agents, and this was before AI coding agents became a popular thing. So maybe the name is not so good now, but it's not like agents hasn't been used 1,000 times before for different things in software. But basically, NX agents is they have CI runners, and to use them, you still have to have your GitHub Actions workflow. You have to start one runner in GitHub, and then everything else is delegated to their CI cloud in NX. So you just have one job that you start, and then it'll delegate tasks and say, okay, I need to build these projects, I need to lint these projects, and then it'll connect to the NX cloud, and they will run all those tasks in their CI system, which is optimized for speed and caching and all of that. And you'll get the result back into your GitHub action stream, which means you have one job and that'll be delegated all the different tasks to the cloud. And setting up that pipeline is pretty easy. You basically tell it, I want to run build lint test, and then it figures out how to delegate that to the cloud.
Good.
So configuring a workflow in GitHub to use NX Cloud, NX agents is pretty easy, and there's even a generator for scaffolding that workflow. Even works for different providers like GitHub and Circle CI and a few others.
Mm. Okay. Wow, this was so much information. My brain takes needs a break. Um,
Okay.
um, I think a
Well,
little bit. Yeah.
yeah, you asked, is it a competitor to Copilot? Well, the closest thing there is,
Mm,
yes, the AI autofix. That's
mhm,
also something you can get from Claude or from Copilot, or you can set it up pretty
mm,
easily, or you can get it from, I don't know, CodeRabbit maybe. So yeah, there are lots of competitors in this scene of
mm.
something broken CI, uh, AI give me a pull request to fix it or make a commit to fix it, right? So in that sense, yes, they are competing. Copilot for that thing, but they are not a local AI coding agent. But the Polygraph product I told you about is a meta harness for any AI coding agent. So whether you're using GitHub Copilot or Cloud Code or Codex or Gemini or whatever, then this Polygraph can sit on top of that and help your AI coding agent set up these different repos, log your sessions, and give them some agent skills to how to manage these different repos and how to open pull requests for multiple repos and so on. And of course how to navigate between the code in multiple repos within one session. Usually you have to open up the coding agent in one repo and you cannot reach the code outside of that repo. That becomes the sandbox. That becomes what your agent is allowed to see and change. But with Polygraph, now you can work in multiple repos with one AI coding agent session.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. I think a little bit about it. Normally, I love the theory, but let's make it more practical. That's an organization. They have a large NX monorepo. They have 500 employees or 500 developers, TypeScript applications, front end, back end servers, hundreds of libraries, GitHub Actions, Playwright, Azure, strict architecture rules, years of legacy code, and GitHub Copilot. And the leadership says to you, we want agent to handle 30% or 50% of routine development work in the next, I don't know, next 3 months. What will you say?
Uh, well, I will say it's good that you have all these tools because that's easy for an AI coding agent to use. They already know NX, the tool chain. They know how to read the architectural boundaries. They know how to use the NX tasks and the caching, um, because that's pre-trained knowledge to the models. They know all the popular open source and paid tools. Otherwise, they wouldn't be very good if they had to learn a new tool every time you open up a session. So, good thing you already have NX and modern tooling. About your legacy code base, that's less of a worry because, of course, your coding agent can't be pre-trained on that. To do that, you would have to fine-tune a model for your specific code base, which doesn't really make a lot of sense in most cases. Maybe except if you're Google or Microsoft with these gigantic monorepos for Windows and Office and everything internal in Google. Um, But instead, what we can do today, of course, is develop our own agent skills for our own code bases. So something about how does your team do this and that. There's always something that's specific to your team or your code base that can now be codified into agent skills and agents.md instructions, no matter whether you're using Copilot or Claude Code or something like that. So, and then if you say you want them to take to perform or execute 70% of routine tasks, that's definitely doable. You say routine tasks. I mean, is there something specific you have in mind? At the end of the day, it's a matter of, do you want to pay for that?
Yeah.
Using AI coding agents on a schedule is not cheap. If you have to pay per token and you run automated tasks every
Mm.
day, so for example, if you have an agent that goes and takes maintenance tickets, in say you're using GitHub, someone opens a maintenance ticket, you need to upgrade your .NET framework or your Angular framework to a new version, and then you want an agent to take that ticket and do it for you. That's possible, but you have to pay for each token spent, and that's not cheap. But if you compare it to having a developer that does all these maintenance tasks uh, every day or every week or every month, of course, there's a financial puzzle that might make sense. And add on top of that, that maintenance is not really, for most developers, the most satisfying part of the job, and that's part of why it gets done too rarely. But also because it's not something that gets prioritized in a product roadmap.
Mm.
There's not an entry in the product roadmap that says update to .NET 10. No, that's something the team usually have to take care of using their own policy. But then comes the product owner and says, no, but we have to build this feature. Okay, I guess we'll postpone that .NET 10 migration for another year.
Wow. This was so many information. Let's jump at the end of the podcast in the rapid fire round. I give a short sentence and you give a short answer. So GitHub Actions are another CI system.
They are the best CI system.
um, uh, GitHub Actions or no, not a GitHub Action question. Playwright or Cypress?
Playwright,
Uh, Copilot chat or autocomplete?
Co- Copilot chat. Do you mean Copilot agents?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
I mean, I actually have a quote on the Copilot extension product page where I say that I will never code without Copilot again because it works so well. Like, it works shockingly well, or something like that. That's a few years old, and as I said, I was a very early user of Copilot because I was a GitHub Star. I got early access, I gave early feedback, and so on. Um, Now I rarely write any code by hand.
Okay.
I instruct a, and I've been doing that for in open source for more than a year professionally since November, December. I have barely written a line of code by hand. So the agents do all the work, uh, whether it's Copilot or Claude Code. They're so good that that's possible. It's more about how do you review and ensure the quality of the code produced by the agent, right? So sorry, what was the question? I lost the thread here.
Yeah, that's cool. It's a rapid fire round. So the
Yeah,
next question it's Carlsberg or Tuborg?
Carlsberg.
Human review or automatic verification?
Both.
Okay. Okay. The most underrated TypeScript feature.
Underrated TypeScript feature. I don't know. I'm more of a fan of JavaScript itself, and
Okay.
it has all the features you need.
Mm,
You
mm,
don't need TypeScript at the end of the day.
yeah. So yeah, thank you, Lars. Oh, that was. Oh God, next time I have to do more research before I do the podcast. Um, yeah, but for me stands out in the conversion. It's how the how architecture yeah how it's changed from the development. It's so it's I don't can bring it in my brain because it's so interesting. Um, yeah, normally I ask who is the next guest I should invite and what's the secret question. But Lars, I have you ask another question. Uh, I'm not the developer guy, but I need one for the podcast. So if you like, you can become a host. You're really welcome, and I think this was so amazing. It was yeah, it was really amazing. And for the guests, all the information about Lars are in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much. This was whoa, this was overwhelming for me.
Well, hopefully your listeners got some inspiration as well. They're free to reach out to me. Find me on LinkedIn and contact me there, for example, or find my email address. It's in my GitHub profile. And if I were to suggest a guest for you, you should talk to my friend Santosh Yadav, who is also an open source maintainer, and now he works at CodeRabbit. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there as well in terms of DevOps and AI and the combination of those two
Mm,
things.
mm. Yeah, then thank you, Lars, for staying here with me this hour. And yeah, was amazing. I learned a lot, and I have a lot research to do. Thank you so much for staying with me here.
You're welcome.